Antigone if their lips weren't sealed by fear. Han if kure is she. Antigone is a particularly modern heroine. She is a rebel, a refusenik. A feminist, an anti-capitalist. Principles are more important than money, a suicide perhaps, certainly a martyr. And without doubt a difficult, insistent person, not unlike some of Ibsen's women. More decisive, less irritating, talky and circular than Hamlet, but, you might say, equally teenage. She has blazed through the centuries to remain one of the great characters of all literature. Is she a saint, a criminal of extraordinary integrity, a masochist, or just stubborn and insolent? Or even mad, in the sense of impossible to understand? Although psychoanalysis is not a determinism, with the parents, Antigone had the self-blinding Oedipus and the suicider Jocasta. You'd have to say she didn't have much of a chance. Nonetheless, she is splendid, a fabulous creature, vibrant in her hardness, even as she is wildly frustrating in her intransigence. She is also a wonderful pen to play for an actress. We must never forget, after all, that Antigone is a play. A noir. Almost. And a profound evening's entertainment. The text, described by Hegel as one of the most sublime, and in every respect, most consummate works of human effort ever brought forth, is a contribution to SHMVBLZ and not a thesis, although as a character Antigone is infinitely interpretable and has been repeatedly written about by philosophers, psychoanalysts, femremists, literary critics and revolutionals. The anti in the name Antigone should be emphasized. What she wants, the strong desire from which Antigone never wavers, is to bury her beloved so-called traitor brother Polynices lying dead and neglected outside the palace walls with ceremony and drgmty. She is absolutely clear, he will not be Carnon for dogs and vultures. She will have the enjewels of Mourn Me. SRNCETH1S is a father-daughter drama, Krian, her adversary. The man who could become her father-in-law, and who is a KRND of daddy substitute, is a tough guy. Krian is a leader, a clever politicran with a mafia don side, a prunal father to whom all the women must belong. He is not the son of man to be mocked or Word 9. Outthought by a young woman, one who is determined from the start not to admire him, and who is set on undermining him. As he insists, the laws of the city speak through me. Krian, then, like her own father, for whom she cared for many years, is self-blinded. There is much he cannot afford to or acknowledge. Antigone, on the other hand, with no children to can enter the domain of men and attempt to persuade Krian to understand her, to recognize the absurdity of the law. She is his perfect foil and necessary nuisance, ideally placed to see on his behalf, to tease out his weaknesses and torment 111M. While Antigone is betrothed to her cousin, Krian's son Haemon. Krian insists, not unreasonably, that the law, which replaces the agency of individuals, has to be obeyed. There cannot be exceptions. That is the point of the law, it is absolute. But for her the law is logical and sadistic, and ethics are ideology. She is uninterested in happiness. She is accused by her sister Ismene of loving Polynices being dead, but the play is certainly concerned with enjoyment. If the law enjoys itself at our expense, she will also enjoy herself. Perhaps too much, taking her sacrifice to its limit, death, and even beyond, into myth, ensuring that she will never disappear. Antigone is certainly a feminist, a girl defying patriarchy, a lone woman standing up to a cruel man. But she ain't no sister. There's No solidarity or community in her accessions. She is a rebel but not a revolutionary. She doesn't want to remove Creon and replace his dictatorship with a more democratic system. In fact, Sophocles is showing us here how the law and dissent create and generate one another, illustrating the necessary tension between the state and the people, the family and the individual, man and woman. Antigone is, in some terrible way, bound to Creon in love, as we are inevitably bound to our enemies. She is not more free than he. This couple are fascinated by one another. What is terrible about Antigone is not so much her belief, but the way she assumes it. She is entirely certain, she is no paragon, and rather than being an example of someone who sticks to through desire, she is a person who cannot think, lacking intellectual flexibility. Her intransigence mimics that of Creon. Indeed, the two of them have similar characters. Neither having any self-doubt, septilism or ability to compromise. Both are afflicted by excessive celerity, so that the two of them will always on a collision course. Both are shown to be monsters, and both will have to die. This play, then, is perfectly balanced in the way it engages the audience, as it moves from argument to argument. It is a play of voices and an exercise in democracy itself, proposing no solution, but clearly displaying the most fundamental questions. There is no agreed upon good. The good is that which can be argued about, but there is no possibility of a final position without imposing it, a form of utopia which can only lead to fascism. Every act renders us guilty in some way. It is as if we'd like to believe we can live without hurting others. But this beautiful story of demonic excess can only end bad. Why on both sides, with Antigone killing herself and Creon having lost his son, consumed with guilt and eventually murdered by the mob, his palace burned down. Antigone could be described as a dialectical teaching play, a what if, showing human action from numerous points of view. Just as the point of a psychoanalysis is not to eliminate conflicts but to expose them. The play doesn't tell us what to think, for it is not a guide to thought, but is another thing altogether, a guide to the necessity of perplexity. It illustrates a necessary conflict, showing that useful rather than deadly conflicts make democracy possible. Introduction. Run, Antigone, Run. The Fast Runner, a unique film retelling an old Inuit, Eskimo legend, was made by the Canadian Inuits themselves in 2001. The director Zacharias Kunuk decided to change the ending, replacing the original slaughter in which all participants die with a more conciliatory conclusion. When a culturally sensitive journalist accused Kunuk of extracting authentic tradition for the cheap appeal to contemporary public, Kunuk replied by accusing the journalist of cultural ignorance. This very readiness to adapt the story to today's specific needs attests to the fact that the authors were still part of the ancient Inuit tradition. Such opportunistic rewriting is a feature of pre-modern cultures, while the very notion of the fidelity to the original signals that we are already in the space of modernity, that we lost our immediate contact with tradition. This is how we should approach numerous recent attempts to stage some classical opera by not only transposing its action into a different, most often contemporary, era, but also by changing some basic facts of the narrative itself. There is no a priori abstract criterion which would allow us to judge the success or failure. Each such intervention is a NSKY act and must be judged by its own immanent standards. Such experiments often ridiculously misfire. However, not always, and there is no way to tell it in advance. So one has to take the risk. Only one thing is sure, The only way to be faithful to a classic work is to take such as risk avoiding it. Sticking to the traditional letter is the safest way to betray the spirit of the classic, in other words, the only way to keep a classical work alive is to treat it as open, pointing towards the future, or, to use the metaphor evoked by Walter Benjamin, to act as if the classic work is a film for which the appropriate chemical liquid to develop. It was invented only later, so that it is only today that we can get the full picture. Among the cases of such successful changes, two stamps of Wagner's operas stand out: Jean-Pierre Ponely's Bayreuth Versrein of Tristan, in which, Act Ill, Tunston dies alone, Isolde stayed with her husband, King Mark. Her appearance at the opera's end is merely the dying Tristan's hallucination, and Hans-Jürgen Syberberg's film version of Parsifal, in WHRCH Amforda's Wound. Introduction 13. Is a partial object, a kind of continually bleeding vagina carried on a pillow outside his body, plus, at the moment of his insight into Amforda's suffering and rejection of Kund Iy, the boy who acted Parsifal is replaced by a young cold girl. In both cases, the change has a tremendous power of revelation. One cannot resist the strong impression that this is how it really should be. So can we imagine a similar change in staging Antigone, one of the founding narratives of the Western tradition? The path was shown by none other than Kierkegaard, who, in the ancient tragical motif as reflected in the Modum, a chapter of Olim I of either, or, proposed his fantasy of what a modum on Lagone would have been. The conflict is now entirely internalized. There is no longer a need for Creon. While Antigone admires and loves her father Oedipus, the public hero and savior of Thebes, she knows the truth about him: murder of the father, incestuous marriage. Her deadlock is that she is prevented from sharing this accursed knowledge. Like Abraham, who also could not communicate to others the divine injunction to sacrifice his son, she cannot complain, share her pain and sorrow with others. In contrast to Sophocles' Antigone, who acts, buries her brother and thus actively assumes her fate, she is unable to act, condemned forever to impassive suffering this unbearable burden of her secret, of her destructive agolma, finally drives her to death, in which only she can find peace otherwise provided by symbolizing/sharing one's pain and sorrow. And Kierkegaard's point is that this situation is no longer properly tragic, again, in a similar way that Abraham is also not a tragic figure. We can imagine the same shift also in the case of Abraham. The God who commands Abraham to sacrifice his son is the superego God who, for his own perverse pleasure, submits his servant to the utter test. What makes Abraham's situation non-tragic is that God's demand cannot be rendered public, shared by the community of believers. Included into the big other, the sublime tragic moment occurs precisely when the hero addresses the public with his terrible plight, when he puts into words his predicament. To put it in a succinct and unambiguous way, God's demand to Abraham has a status similar to that of a secret dirty injunction of a ruler to commit a crime which the state needs, but which cannot be. 14. Introduction. Admitted publicly when, in the autumn of 1586, Queen Elizabeth I was under pressure from her ministers to agree to the execution of Mary Stuart, she replied to their petition with the famous answer: without an answer. If I should say I would not do what you request, I might say perhaps more than I think. And if I should say I would do it, I am tght plunge myself into peril, whom you labor to preserve. The message was clear: she was not ready to say that she doesn't Want Mary executed, since saying this would be saying more. Then I think while she clearly wanted her dead, she did not want to publicly assume upon herself this act of judicial murder. The implicit message of her answer is thus a very clear one: if you are my true faithful servants, do this cruelty for me, kill her without making me responsible for her death, i.e. allowing me to protest my ignorance of the act and even punish some of you to sustain this false appearance. Can we not imagine God himself giving a similar answer if Abraham were to ask him publicly, in front of his fellow wise elders, if he really wants Abraham to kill his only son? If I should say I do not want you to kill Isaac, I might say perhaps more than I think. And if I should say you should do it, I might plunge myself into peril of appearing an evil barbaric God, asking you to violate my own sacred laws, from which you, my faithful follower, labor to save me. Furl Hermor. Insofar as Kierkegaard's Antigone is a paradigmatically modernist figure, one should go on with his mental experiment and imagine a postmodern Antigone with, of course, a Stalinist twist to her image. In contrast to the modernist one, she should find herself in a position in which, to quote Kierkegaard himself, the ethical itself would be the temptation. One version would undoubtedly be for Antigone to publicly denounce, and accuse her father, or, in a different version her brother, Polynices, of his terrible sins out of her unconditional love for him. The Kierkegaardian catch is that such a public act would render Antigone even more isolated, absolutely alone. No one, with the exception of Oedipus himself, if he were still alive, would understand that her act of betrayal is the supreme act of love. Is Introduction 15. This predicament of the postmodern Antigone, not that of Judas, who was secretly enjoined by Christ to publicly betray him and pay the full price for it. Such a version would have been an authentic artistic event, changing our entire perception of the story. Antigone would thus be entirely deprived of her sublime beauty. All that would signal the fact that she is not a pure and simple traitor to her father, but that she did it out of love for him, would be some barely perceptible repulsive tic, like Claudel's Cinda Cofontaines' hysteric twitch of the lips, a tic which no longer belongs to the face. It is a grimace whose insistence disintegrates the unity of a face. Can we not imagine a similar T1C of Judas? A desperate twitch of his lips signaling the terrible burden of his role? Far from just throwing herself into death, from being possessed by a strange wish to die or to disappear, Sophocles' Antigone insists up to her death on performing a precise symbolic gesture, the proper burial of her brother. Like Hamlet, Antigone is a drama of a failed symbolic ritual. Lacan insisted on this continuity. He analyzed Hamlet in his seminar that precedes the ethics of psychoanalysis. Antigone does not stand for some extra symbolic real, but for the pure signifier. Her purity is that of a signifier. This is why, although her act is suicidal, the stakes are symbolic. Her passion is death drive at its purest. But here, precisely, we should distinguish between the Freudian death drive and the Oriental nirvana. What makes Antigone a pure agent of death drive is her unconditional insistence on the demand for the symbolic ritual, an insistence which allows for no displacement or other form of compromise. This is why Lacan's formula of drive is st, the subject unconditionally insisting on a symbolic demand. The problem with Antigone is not the suicidal punty of her death drive, but quite the opposite, that the monstrosity of her act is covered up by its aestheticization. The moment she is excluded from the community of humans, she turns into a sublime apparition, evoking our sympathy by complaining about her plight. This is one of the key dimensions of Lacan's move from Antigone to another tragic heroine, Signe de Cofontaine from Paul Claudel's El Bliage. There is no sublime beauty in Signe at the play's end. All that marks her as different from common mortals is a repeated tic that introduction momentarily disfigures her face. Naya's feature which spoils the harmony of her beautiful face, the detail that sticks out and makes it ugly, is the material trace of her resistance to being co-opted into the universe of symbolic debt and guilt. And, back to Christ, this, then, should be the first step of a leading of Christianity. The dying Christ is on the side of Signe, not on the side of Antigone. Christ on the cross is not a sublime apparition but an embarrassing monstrosity. Another aspect of this monstrosity was clearly perceived by Rembrandt, whose Lazarus, one of the most dramatic classic paintings, is a depiction of Christ at the moment he is raising Lazarus from the dead. What strikes the eye is not only the figure of Lazarus, a monstrous living dead returning to life, but, even more so, the terrified expression on Christ's face, as if he is a magician. Shocked that his spell really worked, disgusted by what he brought back to life, aware that he is playing with forces better left alone. This is a true Kierkegaardian Christ, shocked not by his mortality, but by the heavy burden of his supernatural powers which border on blasphemy, the blasphemy at work in every good biography. Biography is in fact one of the occult arts. It uses scientific means, documentation, analysis, inquiry to achieve a hermetic end, the transformation of base material into gold. Its final intention is the most ambitious and blasphemous of all, to bring back a human being to life. Antigone is thus to be opposed to Claudel's Signe de Cofontaine. If Oedipus and Antigone are the exemplary cases of ancient tragedy, Signe stands for the Christian tragedy. Signe lives in the modern world where God is dead. There is no objective fate, our fate is our own choice, we are fully responsible for it. Signe first follows the path of ecstatic love to the end, sacrificing her good, her ethical substance, for God, for his pure otherness, and she doesn't do it on account of some external pressure, but out of the Ermenost freedom of her being. She cannot blame any fate when she finds herself totally humiliated, deprived of all ethical substance of her being. This, however, is why Signe's tragedy is much more radical than that of Oedipus or Antigone, when mortally wounded after receiving the bullet meant for her despicable and hated husband, she refuses to confer any deeper sacrificial meaning on her suicidal interposition. There is no tragic beauty in this refusal. Her no is introduction we signaled by a mere repellent mace, a compulsive tic of her face. Illyria is no tragic beauty because her utter sacrifice deprived her of all inner beauty and ethical grandeur. They all went into it, so that remains a disgusting experimental stain of humanity, a living shell. Deprived of life, there is no love here either, all her love went into her previous renunciations. In a way, Signe is here crucified, her no, like Christ's Father, why did you abandon me? Which is also a gesture of defiance, of up yours, directed at the Godfather _ bombs is fight to bend out that this Christian no in all its forms is the unthinkable traumatic core of pure love, a scandal which undermines it from within. Here is his breathtakingly precise formulation. The unthinkable in pure love is, in a sense, Christianity itself, the scandal of the cross, the passion and the death of Christ, the why did you abandon me, from the psalm taken over by Christ and to which the mystics of pure love conferred a radically intolerable for the Church. This moment of tragedy, this return of the tragic in the very heart of Christianity as the religion of love, is also the point which the self-erasing mystique of ecstatic love cannot properly grasp. When mystics talk about the night of the world, they directly identify this night, the withdrawal from external reality into the void of pure limeerness, with the divine beatitude, with the self-erasing immersion into divinity. For Christianity, in contrast, the unbearable and unsurpassable tension remains. There is an extimate no in the very heart of the loving yes to it all. This no has nothing to do with the imaginary logic of enumeration, of the reversal of narcissistic love into hatred. Claudel himself found Sign's refusal of reconciliation with Turlure at the end of El Oligmeisterlaus. It imposed itself on him while he was writing the drama, since it was not part of the original plan. First, he intended the marriage of Sign and Turlure to mark the reconciliation of the ancien regime and the new regime in the Restoration. Then he planned Badayan to convince the dying Sign to give the demanded sign of pardon and reconciliation to Turlure. Significantly, most of the critics perceived Sign's refusal not as the mark of her radicality, but as the mark of her failure to follow Wien introduction through with the sacrifice demanded fraught on her, i.e. to consent fully to the marriage with the despicable Turlure. Our idea is that, by way of refusing a sign of consent and dymg in ice-cold silence and withdrawal, Sign disavows religious principles which hitherto dictated her behavior. As Abel Hernant wrote, Turlure tries to extract from Sign a sign of pardon, which would be for him the sign that he has definitely conquered her and reached the end of his ambitions. But Sign refuses this pardon, on which nonetheless her eternal salvation seems to depend. She thus renders all her sacrifices worthless in the last minute. To such readings, Claudel feebly protested, "Elle believes she is saved," conceding that the meaning of her final act is not clear to him. At the play's end, the persons escape all psychological investigation. At the human level, Sign of course refused to fulfill her sacrifice. We do not know more about it, and the author himself can only suppose a meaning to her final. However, in order to locate a figure which clearly opposes Antigone, we do not have to reach forward to European modernity. We find it already in the ancient Greek universe, Electra. In both cases we have a feminine couple, with a sister, Ismene, Chrysothemis, who is more human, full of empathy but also of pragmatic conformism. In Sophocles' Electra, both Orestes and Electra are living dead, like Antigone after her banishment from the city. Recall Orestes saying to Aegisthus, "Don't you realize yet that you're talking to dead men alive?" Chorus tried to bring Electra back to ordinary reality. Yet you run yourself out in a grief with no cure, no time limit, no measure. It is a knot no one can untie. Why are you so in love with things unbearable? Like Antigone, Electra reasserts her total commitment, but unlike Antigone, she endorses it in all its violence. By dread things I am compelled, I know that. I see the trap closing. I know what I am, but while life is in me, I will not stop this violence. No, and she is well aware that this violence slips over into madness. I ask one thing, let me go mad in my own way. With regard to this violence, consider the final confrontation between Orestes and Aegisthus, who also declares I'm a dead man, no way out. But let me just say immediately he is interrupted by Electra addressing Orestes, "No. Don't let him speak. 1_1 kill Hun at once / row his corpse out / for scavengers to get." So, exactly like Polonices in Antigone, he should not be Properly buried. Orestes obeys his sister's injunction and orders Aegisthus to enter the house, to which Augustus first retorts, "Why? Take me inside. If the deed is honorable, what need of darkness?" But then he immediately concedes, "You lead the way." Orestes: "No, you go first." Aegisthus: "Afraid I'll escape." Orestes: "You shall not die on your own terms." Chorus's final lines then render Orestes' cruel act in a surprising empty gesture of celebration. "You took arm and struck, you have won your way through / to the finish." This finale is an effective anti-Antigone, no ritual, no speech, just a killing performed in darkness, like a mob liquidation. In my version, I also try to imagine an act of liquidation, but an act which, instead of being performed in secret, publicly declares itself. What all these dark echoes of figures like Antigone and Electra indicate is the obscure and hidden obverse of the ancient Greek. Tmiverse, the limit of the harmonious order deployed by Solon, the founder of the Athenian democracy, in his famous ethico-political poem on Eunomia, the beautiful order. "These things my spirit bids me teach the men of Athens, that dysnomia brings countless evils for the city, but eunomia brings order, and makes everything proper, by enfolding the unjust and fetters, smoothing those things that are rough, stopping greed, sentencing hybris to obscurity, making the flowers of mischief to wither, and straightening crooked judgments. It calms the deeds of arrogance." XX Introduction. And stops the bilious anger of harsh strife. Under its control, all things are proper, and prudence reigns human affairs. No wonder the same principle is asserted in the famous chorus on the uncanny, demonic dimension of man from Sophocles' Antigone. "If man honors the laws of the land, and reveres the gods of the state, proudly his city shall stand, but a cityless outcast. Irate who bold in his pride from the path of right does depart, never may I sit by his side, or share the thoughts of his heart." Some even compose a much more radical translation of the last line, like a Oxenberg Rorty, "A person without a city, beyond human boundary, a horror, a pollution to be avoided." One should recall here that this chorus reacts to the news that someone, at this point one doesn't yet know who, violated Creon's prohibition and performed funeral rites on Polonice's body. It is Antigone herself, who is implicitly castigated as the cityless outcast engaged in excessive demonic acts which disturb the eumonia of the state, fully reasserted in the last lines of the play. The most important part of happiness is therefore wisdom not to act impiously towards the gods, for boasts of arrogant men bring on great blows of punishment. So in old age men can discover wisdom. From the standpoint of eumonia, Antigone is definitely demonic / uncanny. Her defying act expresses a stance of demeasured, excessive insistence which disturbs the beautiful order of the city. Her unconditional ethics violates the harmony of the poles, and is as such beyond human boundary. The irony is that, while Antigone presents herself as the guardian of the immemorial laws which sustain human order, she acts as a freakish and ruthless abomination. There definitely is something cold and monstrous about her, as is rendered by the contrast between her and her warmly human sister Ismene. This uncanny dimension is signaled by the ambiguity in the name Antigone. It can be read as unbending. Introduction XXI. Coming from anti and gon / goni, corner, bend, angle, but also as op b3 said to motherhood, or in place of a mother from the root gon, that which generates, gonos, goni as in theogony. It is difficult to resist the temptation of positing a link between the Two meanings, is being a mother not the basic form of a woman's bending, subordination, so that Antigone's uncompromising attitude has to entail the rejection of motherhood. Ironically, in the original myth, reported by Hygelnus in his Fabulae 72, Antigone was a mother, when she was caught in the act of performing funeral rites for her brother Polynices. Creon handed her over for execution to his son Haemon, to whom she had been betrothed. But Haemon, while he pretended to put her to death, smuggled her out of the way, married her, and had a son by her. In time the son grew up and came to Thebes, where Creon detected him by the bodily mark which all descendants of the Sparli or dragon men bore on their bodies. Creon was inexorable, so Haemon killed himself and his wife Antigone. There are indications that Hyginus here followed Euripides, who also wrote a tragedy Antigone, of which a few fragments survived, and one of them is, man's best possession. Is a sympathetic wife definitely not Sophocles' Antigone? If we were to tell this story to someone not knowing about the origins of the Antigone story, he would probably dismiss Hyginus's version as a kitsch melodrama. So while Antigone is an uncanny figure who disturbs the harmony of the traditional universe, one should no less resist the opposite temptation to interpret her as a proto-modem emancipatory heroine who speaks for all those excluded from the public domain, all those whose voices are not heard, in short, for what Agamben calls homo sacer. Agamben's analysis should be given its full radical character. His notion of homo sacer should not be watered down into an element of a radical democratic project whose aim is to renegotiate or redefine the limits of in and exclusion, so that the symbolic field will be more and more open also to the voices of those who are excluded by the hegemonic configuration of the public discourse. Therein resides the gist of Judith Butler's reading of Antigone. The limit for which she stands. A limit for which no standing, no translatable representation is possible, is the trace of XXII introduction. An alternate legality that haunts the conscious, public sphere. As its scandalous future underscore, Antigone formulates her claim on behalf of all those who, like the sans-papiers in today's France, are without a full and definite socio-ontological status, and Butler herself refers here to Agamben's homo sacer, which is why one should prn down neither the position from which, on behalf of which, Antigone is speaking, nor the object of her claim, in spite of her emphasis of the unique position of the brother. This object is not as unambiguous as it may appear. Is Oedipus himself also not her half-brother? Her position is not simply feminine, because she enters the male domum of public affairs in addressing Creon, the head of state. She speaks like him, appropriating his authority in a perverse/displaced way, and neither does she speak on behalf of kinship, as Hegel claimed, since her very family stands for the ultimate incestuous corruption of the proper order of kinship. Her claim thus displaces the fundamental contours of the law, what the law excludes and includes. Butler develops her reading in contrast to two main opponents, not only Hegel but also Lagan. In Hegel, the conflict is conceived as internal to the socio-symbolic order, as the tragic split of the ethical substance. Creon and Antigone stand for its two components, state and family, day and night, the human legal order and the divine subterranean order. Lacan, on the contrary, emphasizes how Antigone, far from standing for kinship, assumes the limit position of the very instituting gesture of the symbolic order, of the impossible zero level of symbolization, which is why she stands for death drive, while still alive. She is already dead with regard to the symbolic order, excluded from the socio-symbolic coordinates. In what one is almost tempted to call a dialectical synthesis, Butler rejects both extremes, Hegel's location of the conflict within the socio-symbolic order, Lacan's notion of Antigone as standing for the going to the limit, for reaching the outside of this order. Antigone undermines the existing symbolic order not simply from its radical outside, but from a utopian standpoint of aiming at its radical re-articulation. Antigone is a living dead not in the sense which Butler attributes to Lacan, of Entang the mysterious. Introduction XXIII. Domain of 8L of going to the limit of the law, she is a living dead in the of publicly assuming an uninhabitable position, a position for which there is place L and the public space not a priori, but only with regard to the way this space is structured now, in the historically contingent and conditions. Illes, then, is Butler's central point against Lacan, Lacan's very radically, the notion that Antigone locates herself in the suicidal outside of the symbolic order, reasserts this order, the order of the established kinship relations, silently assuming that the ultimate alternative is the one between the symbolic law of fixed patriarchal kinship relations and its suicidal ecstatic transgression. What about the third option, that of re-articulating these kinship relations themselves, i.e., of reconsidering the symbolic law as the set of contingent social arrangements open to change? Antigone speaks for all the subversive pathological claims which crave to be admitted into the public space, however, to identify what she stands for in this reading with Homo sacer misses the basic thrust of Agamben's analysis. There is no place in Agamben for the democratic project of renegotiating the limit which separates full citizens from Homo sacer by gradually allowing their voices to be heard. His point is, rather, that, in today's post-politics, the very democratic public space is a mask concealing the fact that, ultimately, we are all Homo sacer. Does, then, this mean that Agamben fully and simply participates in the line of those who, like Adorno and Foucault, identify as the secret telos of the development of our societies, a total closure of the administered world in which we are all reduced to the status of objects of biopolitics? Although Agamben denies any democratic way out, in his detailed reading of St. Paul, he violently reasserts the revolutionary messianic dimension, and if this messianic dimension means anything at all, it means that mere life is no longer the ultimate terrain of politics. That is to say, what is suspended the messianic attitude of awaiting the end of time is precisely the central place of mere life, in clear contrast to it, the fundamental feature of post-politics is the reduction of politics to biopolitics in the precise sense of administering and regulating mere life. Which Antigone would fit this contemporary condition? Coping with this problem, I imagined another triad. The starting point remains the same, and it is only at the crucial point in the middle of the play, the big confrontation between Antigone and Creon, that the three versions would diverge. The first version follows Sophocles' denouement, and the concluding chorus praises Antigone's unconditional insistence on her per Michaelpul fiat jus recipi et mundus. The second version shows what would have happened if Antigone were to win, convincing Creon to allow the proper burial of Polynices, i.e. if her principled attitude were to prevail. In this version, the concluding chorus sings a Brechtian praise of pragmatism. The ruling class can afford to obey honor and rigid principles, while ordinary people pay the price for it. In the third version, chorus is no longer the purveyor of stupid commonplace wisdoms, it becomes an active agent At the climactic moment of the ferocious debate between Antigone and Cleon, Chorus steps forward, castigating both of them for their stupid conflict which threatens the survival of the entire city. Acting like a kind of comite de salad public, Chorus takes over as a collective organ and imposes a new rule of law, installing people's democracy in Thebes. Creon is deposed, both Creon and Antigone are arrested, put to trial, swiftly condemned to death and liquidated. Sophocles and Antigone is thus retold here in the mode of Bertolt Brecht's three learning plays, J. Sager Neen Sager. J. Sager 2 at the crucial point of decision, events take three different directions. A procedure later used in two films, Krzysztof Kieslowski's Blind Chance and Tom Tyquer's Run, Lola. Run. My premise is that such a staging confronts us with a true Antigone for our times. Ruthlessly abandoning our sympathy and compassion for the play's heroine. Introduction XXV. Making her part of the problem, and proposing a way out which shatters us in our humanitarian complacency. My retelling is consciously anachronistic, suffice it to mention. Koinhydra, to which the chorus refers, although it appeared only in the second half of the first millennium of our era. Relying on Ian Johnston's translation of Sophocles, the text-free Y borrows ideas and formulations from Talmud, Euripides' Electra, Hegel's Phenomenology of Spirit, Walter Benjamin's essay on the art of translation, Brecht's poems, Orson Welles' Citizen Kane, Paul Claudel's Hostage, Pena it Istrati, Vladimir Safadal, Alenka Zupancic, etc. etc. It doesn't pretend to be a work of art but an ethico-political exercise. The Three Lives of Antigone. Chorus leader. A lean rock stands proudly alone in deep grass. But when strong man's hands raise it, worms, insects, roaches, all the swarming and disgusting murmur of life confronts the eye, a chaos even gods can't master. Such is our ultimate reality. Some heroic men attempt to introduce some harmony and order into this chaos, but they miserably fail, their acts only destabilizing further the cosmic order. Our life's a broken vessel, its fragments scattered. It's as if gods are playing dice with us. When a life story is told, we note how at many points it may have taken another while there's no way to bring the fragments together and restore the vessel in its harmony. We can do another thing. We can tell a hero's life so that, at the point of bifurcation, when gods threw their dice, we narrate all possible throws of the dice. In this way, we get many stories parallel, one over the other. And while they do not form a harmonious whole, they do confront us with a complete picture. From it we learn how things might have taken a much better turn, but sometimes also how what appears to us a bad turn was luck in disguise, since other turns would have been much worse. Such is the case with poor Antigone, who wanted to see her treasonous brother killed in the onslaught on his own city of Thebes, properly buried. Our story begins in front of the royal palace. Thebes, in a palace, which stands in its main doors facing audience. Antigone leading Ismene away from the palaceal. Ismene. Why did you bring me here, outside the gates? You're thinking of some dark and gloomy news. Antigone. Antigone. Look what's Creon doing with our two brothers. He's honoring one with a full funeral, and treating the other one disgracefully. Idiocles, they say, has had his burial according to our customary rites, to win him honor with the dead below. But as for Polynices, who perished miserably, an order has gone out throughout the city, that's what people say. He's to have no funeral or lament, but to be len unburied and unwept. a sweet treasure for the birds to look at, for them to feed on to their heart's content. Anyone who acts against the order will be stoned to death before the city. Is many. Oh my poor sister, if that's what's happening. What can I say that would be any help? To ease the situation or resolve it? Antigone. Think whether you will work with me in this. And act together. Will you help these hands? Take up Polonice's corpse and bury it? Is many. Your love for your brother is so strange. I do not recognize myself in it, there's no compassion in it, no warm feeling for the beloved. It is as if you love him to be dead. As if you're ready to destroy what you love. Antigone. True love is cold, more cold than death itself. It's not a matter of feeling which sways here and there. Firm as a rock, it brushes off the sway of emotions, easily enduring all pressure and constraint. For Antigone is me any. A woman should not talk like that, not ever. We must remember that by birth we're women. And, as such, we shouldn't fight with men. Since those who rule are much more powerful, we must obey in this and in events which bring us even harsher agonies. So I'll ask those underground for pardon. Since I'm being compelled, I will obey those in control. That's what I'm forced to do. It makes no to try to do too much underscore. Antigone. Well, if you wish, you can show contempt. For those laws the gods all hold in honor. Is me any. I'm not disrespecting them. But I can't act against the slate. That's not in my nature. Antigone. Let nature then be your excuse. Just don't forget. You chose it. My choice is different, so I'm going now to make a burial mound for my dear brother. Ismene, whispers Ten herself. Uve also made a choice. Your duty's your excuse. Iexii Antigone away fmm the palace, Ismene watches her go and then slowly into the palace. Enter he chorus of Theban elders will Creonel. Creon. I have the throne, all royal power. For I am the one most closely linked by blood to those who have been killed. Let Zeus know. The god who always watches everything. I would not stay silent if I saw disaster moving here against the citizens. A threat to their security. That's why. Antigone. I've announced to all citizens my orders for the sons of Oedipus. Eteocles, who perished in the fight. To save our city, the best and bravest of our spearmen, will have his burial. With all those purifying rituals which accompany the noblest corpses as they move below. As for his brother, that Polonices, who returned from exile, eager to wipe out in all-consuming fire his ancestral city and its native gods, keen to seize upon his family's blood and lead men into slavery for him. The proclamation in the state declares, he'll have no burial mound, no funeral rites, and no lament. He'll be left unburied. His body there for birds and dogs to eat. A clear reminder of his shameful fate. That's my decision. And if anyone thinks of contravening it, just imagine the consequences. If Polonices is given a proper burial, the people of our city will react with fury against such an act of honoring the traitor. There will be blood, and the whole city of Thebes will become a funeral pyre for Polonices. I thus beseech you, do not yield to those who contravene my orders. Their sense of justice is misplaced, it is the deceiving mask of a desire for death and destruction. Even if they appear to perform a sacred rite, their god is none other than Bacchus, who wants to drag us all into the dark abyss of the orgy of destruction. So learn to recognize beneath the noble face of a mourner the crazy drunken head of Bacchus. Chorus leader. No one is such a fool that he loves death. Enter a guard, coming towards the palaceal. 6 Antigone. Creon. What's happening that's made you upset? Clearly you have news of something ominous. It's about Polonice's corpse. Someone has buried it and disappeared. After spreading thirsty dust onto the flesh. And underlacking all apronate rites. Creon. What are you saying? What man would dare this? Guard. I don't know. Whoever did it left no trace. The corpse was hidden, but not in a tomb. It was lightly covered up with dirt. As if someone wanted to avert a curse. Chorus leader. My lord, I've been wondering for some time now. Could this act not be something from the gods? Creon. Stop now before what you re about to say enrages me completely and reveals that you're not only old but stupid, too. No one can tolerate what you've just said. When you claim gods might care about this corpse. Enter the guard, bringing Antigone with him. She is NOL existing L. Guard. This here's the one who carried out the act. This girl here, we saw her elving that dead man's corpse. Full burial rites. When seeing a naked corpse, she uttered a distressing painful cry, just like a bird who's seen an empty nest. Its fledglings gone. She screamed out a lament, then right away her hands threw on the thirsty dust. She lifted up a finely made bronze jug and then 3 tunes. Antigone poured out her tributes to the dead. When we saw that, we rushed up right away and grabbed her. She was not afraid at all. We charged her with her previous offense, as well as this one. She just kept standing there, denying nothing. Creon. You there, you with your face bent down towards the ground, what do you say? Do you deny you did this or admit it? Antigone. I admit I did it, I won't deny that. Creon. Were you aware there was a proclamation forbidding what you did? Antigone. I'd heard of it. How could I not? It was public knowledge. Creon. And yet you dared to break those very laws? Antigone. Yes, nothing that you proclaimed is strong enough to let a mortal override the gods and their unwritten and unchanging laws. They're not just for today or yesterday, but exist forever, and no one knows where they first appeared. So I did not mean to let a fear of any human will lead to my punishment among the gods. I know all too well I'm going to die. How could I not? It makes no difference what you decree. Creon. These laws of yours I don't know. 8 Antigone. What you are talking about, you insolent girl. I deal with what I see, our city, its written laws. That people know and have to obey. Your laws. I do not see them. Antigone. My immemorial laws. You have to believe in them to see them. Creon. I see, so they are fits of your imagination? Antigone. Once you believe in them, you see that they are real. Much more real than what you see, much more inviolable. Although you cannot touch them. Chorus leader. It's clear enough. The spirit in this girl is passionate. Her father was the same. She has no sense of compromise in times of trouble. What's wrong with her is indicated by her name. It means unbending, but also against generating. Being a mother is how women in our society bend and subordinate to man's superior will by giving birth. So we were wrong. And she's a fool who loves death. Crazy and insolent. By far not as modest as she claims to be. If she wanted just to be faithful to her gods of underground, she should celebrate them underground, hidden out of public sight. The family haven. By stepping out and speaking in public about them. Confronting the king. She entered the domain of men. Her words may sound feminine, but her act was manly. Korean, to the chorus leader. This girl here was already very insolent. In contravening laws we had proclaimed. Here she agam displays her proud contempt. Having done the act, she now boasts of it. She laughs at what she's done. Well, in this case, Antigone. If she gets her way and goes unpunished, then she's the man here, not me. Antigone. Take me and kill me, what more do you want? Korean. Me. Nothing. In all this I'm for nothing. When I speak, the laws of our city speak through me. I aren't just a mediator. A medium through which justice reaches its target. With that, as nothing, I have everything. Antigone. Then why delay? But where could I gain greater glory than setting my own brother in his grave? All those here would confirm this pleases them. If their lips weren't sealed by fear being king, which offers all sorts of various benefits, means you can talk and act just as you wish. Korean. In all of Thebes, you're the only one who looks at things that way. Antigone. They share my views, but they keep their mouths shut just for you. Korean. These views of yours so different from the rest, don't they bring you any sense of shame? Antigone. No, there's nothing shameful in honoring my mother's children. Korean. Do not make it too easy for yourself. You insolent kid, your brother was a traitor to his city. Because of his vile acts many widows are shedding tears. Every night, he was destroying this country, while your other brother went to his death defending it. O Antigone. Antigone. In the world below such actions are perhaps no crime. Korean. Who knows what rules hold down there, in that place, from which no one has yet returned back to life. If things stand like you say, then the world below is a strange place where justice counts for nothing. Methinks that in a just world, an enemy can never be a friend, not even in death. When one dies, our deeds are measured with the impartial eyes of gods, and one is allocated a proper place in the scale of justice. Even if, while alive, a vile man may succeed in deceiving others and was hailed as hero, after his death, his deeds appear as what they were and he is hated. Antigone. But my nature is to love. I cannot hate. Korean. Sometimes one's nature is a bad guide. I also do not hate. Your brother, how could I am his uncle. It's not hatred, but justice which speaks through my acts and decisions. So go down to the dead. If you must love, love them. No woman's going to defy me in the public space. And govern me, no, not while I'm still alive. I an ear to attendance for the house bringing is many to Korean. Korean. You there, do you admit you played your part in this burial, or will you swear an oath you had no knowledge of it? Is many. I did it, so I bear the guilt as well. Antigone. No. Justice will not allow you to say that. You didn't want to. I didn't work with you. Antigone. Is many. But now you're in trouble, I'm not ashamed of suffering, too, as your company. Let me respect the dead and die with you. Antigone. Don't try to share my death or make a claim to actions which you did not do. I'll die, and that will be enough. Is many. I feel so wretched leaving you to die. Antigone. But you chose life, it was my choice to die. Be brave. You're alive. But my spirit dread. Time ago I might help the dead. Is many. How could I live alone, without you here? Korean. Don't talk of her being here. Her life is over. Is many. You regong to kill your own son's bride? Korean. Why not? There are other fields for him to plow. Ismene, silently to herself. Our unfortunate father was plowing his own mother's field. Chorus leader. So she must die, that seems decided on. Creon. Yes, for you and me the matter's closed. Leaves? Antigone. In my wretchedness I have no home. Not with human beings or corpses. 11. 12. Antigone. Not with the living or the dead. A hero is alive while dead, he goes on living. In the glorious memory of his countrymen, while I am dead. While still alive, an abject and embarrassment to people's eyes. So who am I? I've heard about a guest of ours. Daughter of Tantalus, from Phrygia. She went to an excruciating death. In Sipylus, right on the mountain peak. The stone there, just like clinging ivy, wore her down, and now, so people say, the snow and ram never leave her there. As she laments, below her weeping eyes, her neck is wet with tears. God brings me to a final rest which most resembles hers. Chorus. It's a fine thing for a woman, once she's dead, to have it said she shared in life and death the fate of demigods. But you, Antigone, you're not yet dead. And while still alive, you already weave a myth about yourself. Imagine how you will look when dead. When you talk like that, no tears can be shed. Only a smile can pass our lips, a smile at a girl in love with herself, vain enough to think about her look even when she is about to die. Yes. You sacrificed everything, but you did not sacrifice your sacrifice itself. You gave away everything, but you did not give away your act of giving itself. It's only when you do that, when you not only disappear, but when your very act of disappearing disappears, that you are no longer in love with yourself, with your noble gesture, and reach true modesty. Antigone. Oh, you are mocking me. Why do you insult me now right to my face, without waiting for my death? Antigone. In my wretchedness I have no home. Not with Hutnan beings or not with the living or the dead. Ilys is my reward for covering my brother's corpse. However, for wise people I was right to honor you. I'd never have done it for children of my own, not as their mother, nor for a dead husband lying in decay. No, not in defiance of the citizens. What law do I appeal to, claiming this? If my husband died, there'd be another one. And if I were to lose a child of mine, I'd have another with some other man. But since my father and my mother, too, are hidden away in Hades' house, I'll never have another living brother. That was the law I used to honor you. Chorus. Your words tell more truth than the thoughts behind them. Now we see that the law you honor is just about you and your brother. Not about respect for all who die. It's about a girl deprived of her last toy. The attendants lake Antigone away for execution. Enter Haemon from the Palaceal. Creon. My son, have you heard the sentence that's been passed upon your bride? And have you now come here angry at your father? Or are you loyal to me? On my side no matter what I do? Haemon. Father, I'm yours. For me your judgments and the ways you act on them are good. I shall follow them. 13. 14. Antigone. Indeed, my son. That's how your heart should always be resolved. To stand behind your father's judgment. So spit this girl out, she's your enemy. Let her marry someone else in Hades. Anyone who's proud and violates our laws, or thinks he'll tell our leaders what to do, wins no praise from me. No. We must obey whatever man the city puts in charge. No matter what the issue, great or small, just or unjust. For there's no greater evil then a lack of leadership. That destroys whole cities, turns households into ruins. And war makes soldiers break and run away. When men succeed, what keeps their lives secure? In almost every is their obedience. That's why they must support those in control. And never let some woman beat us down. If we must fall from power, let that come at some man's hand at least. We won't be called inferior to any woman. Chorus. Unless we're being deceived by our old age. What you've just said seems reasonable to us. Haemon. Your words are right, but others might be good as well. Your gaze makes citizens afraid they can't say anything you would not like to hear. But in the darkness I can hear them talk. The city is upset about the girl. They say of all women here she least deserves the worst of deaths for her most glorious act. When in the slaughter her own brother died, she did not just leave him there unburied, to be ripped apart by carrion dogs or birds. Surely she deserves some golden honor? Antigone. That's the dark secret rumor people speak. For me, Father, nothing is more valuable than your well-being. For any children, what could be a greater honor to them than their father's thriving reputation? So don't let your mind dwell on just one thought. That what you say is right and nothing else. A man who thinks that only he is wise, that he can speak and think like no one else. When such men are exposed, then all can. Their emptiness inside for any man. Even if there's nothing shameful in learning many things, staying flexible. So end your anger, permit yourself to change. For if as a younger man, may state my views, I'd say it would be for the best. If men by nature understood all things. If not, and that is usually the case. When men speak well, it good to learn from them. Creon, whispers O himself. Yes, men may murmur and complain about my deeds. But they still want it done by someone else. Just not by them. I acted here as a true leader. In doing what I did, I effectively enacted what people are afraid to admit that they want. People are hypocrites, they want a duty deed done. And they want to keep their hands clean. Chorus leader. The things which you both said were excellent. My lord, if what your son has said is relevant, it seems appropriate to learn from him. And you too, Haemon, listen to the king. Creon. And men my age, are we then going to school to learn what's wise from men as young as him? 15. 16 Antigone. Haemon. There's nothing wrong in that. And if I'm young, don't think about my age 100k at what I do. Creon. And what you do, does that include this? Hanaung those who act against our laws? Haemon. What do you want to speak and never hear someone reply? Exit Haemon running back into the palace. Enter Tiresias. Led by a young boil. Creon. What brought you here, old Tiresias? It must low be the dark clouds that are gathering above our Thebes. Tiresias. Not just dark clouds, can't you see how it already rains? And how the torrent will wash our noble city away? It's all your fault, you do know how to argue. You've got a quick tongue and seem intelligent. But your words don't make any sense at all. You unhappy man. You've no idea just what it is you were saying. When you prohibited Polonice's funeral rites. You've gone mad. It is not Antigone who is possessed by demonic madness, it is you, our king. Creon. These are harsh words from an old wise man. Can you justify them? Tiresias. What makes you mad is your very reasoning. It ignores ancient traditions, you act as if you do not live among us. People rooted in traditions from times immemorial. To the gods we mortals are all ignorant. Those old traditions from our ancestors. The ones we've had as long as time itself. No argument will ever overthrow, in spite of subtleties. Antigone 17. Sharp minds invent so when you oppose the madness of Bacchus. You display a madness of your own. Creon. No subtle sophistry dwells in my words. All that I did was based on sane and wise consideration. My only purpose was to save our city-state from chaos and destruction. Tiresias. You may think you're sane, but it was your sane reasoning which made our state sick. Your policies have done this. In the city our altars and our hearths have been defiled. All of them, with rotting flesh brought there by birds and dogs from Oedipus's son, who lies there miserably dead. The gods no longer will accept our sacrifice. Our prayers, our thigh bones burned in fire. No bird will shriek out a clear sign to us, for they have gorged themselves on fat and blood. From a man who's dead, consider this, my son. All men make mistakes, that's not uncommon. But when they do, they're no longer foolish or subject to bad luck if they try to fix the evil into which they've fallen. Once they give up their intransigence, make concessions to the dead, what's the glory in killing a dead person one more time? In doing so, you will not see the sun race through its cycle many times before you lose a child of your own loins. A corpse TN payment for these corpses. Uve thrown down to those below someone from up above. In your arrogance, you've moved a living soul into a grave, leaving here a body owned by gods below, unburied, dispossessed, unsanctified. That's no concern of yours or gods above. In this you violate the ones below. Elarid Tiresias, led by the young boy. 18 Antigone. Chorus leader. My lord, such dreadful prophecies. You need to listen to some good advice. Creon, visibly shaken. Tell me what to do. Speak up. I'll do it. Chorus leader. Go and release the girl from her rock tomb. Then prepare a grave for that unburied corpse. Go now and get this done. Don't give the work to other men to do. Creon. I'll go just as I am. Come, you servants, each and every one of you. Come on. Bring axes with you. Go there quickly. Up to the higher ground. I've changed my mind. Creon and his attendants hurry off stage. Chorus. There are many uncanny and demonic things, but nothing more uncanny and demonic than man. He's taught himself speech and windswift thought, trained his feelings for communal civic life, learning to escape the icy shafts of frost, volleys of pelting rain in winter storms, the harsh life lived under the open sky. That's man, so resourceful in all he does. There's no event his skill cannot confront, other than death that alone he cannot shun. The qualities of his inventive skills BRMG arts beyond his dreams and lead him on, sometimes to evil and sometimes to good. If he treats his country's laws with due respect, and honors justice by swearing on the gods, he wins high honors in his city. But when he grows bold and turns to evil, Antigone, then he has no city. A man like that, let 111 not share my home or know my mind. Most important part of true success is therefore wisdom, not to act impiously towards the gods, for boasts of arrogant men bring on great blows of punishment. In old age men can discover wisdom. Enter a messenger. Chorus leader. Have you come with news of some fresh trouble in our house of kings? Messenger. They re-dead, and those alive bear the responsibility. We moved to the young girl's rocky cave, the hollow cavern of that bride of death. In the furthest corner of the tomb, we saw Antigone hanging by the neck, held up in a noose fine woven linen. Haemon had his hands around her waist. He was embracing her and crying out in sorrow for the loss of his own bride. Now among the dead, his father's work Krian saw him, let out a fearful groan. Then went inside and called out anxiously. "You unhappy boy, what have you done? Come out, my child, I'm begging you, please come." But the boy just stared at him with savage eyes, spat in his face and, without saying a word, drew his two-edged sword. Krian moved away. So the boy's blow failed to strike his father. Angry at himself, the ill-fated lad, right then and there leaned into his own sword, driving half the blade between his ribs. While still conscious, he embraced the girl in his weak arms. And, as he breathed his last, he coughed up streams of blood on her fair cheek. 19:20 Antigone. Chorus leader. Tiresias, how your words have proven true. Enter Krian from the side, with attendants. Krian is holding the body of Himonel. Chorus leader. Here comes the king in person, carrying in his hands, if it's right to speak of this, a clear reminder that this evil comes not from some stranger, but his own mistakes. Krian. I, my fear now makes me tremble. Why won't someone now strike out at me? Pie my heart with a double-blade sword? Alas for me, the guilt for all of this is mine. It can never be removed from me or passed to any other mortal man. And I alone. Chorus. There's no release for mortal human beings. Not from events which destiny has set. Krian. When such horrible things happen, heaven itself seems to darken, as if there are no gods, as if humans dwell alone in a grey world without spirit. Chorus. But to measure such horror, one needs gods. The horror reaches well beyond the human scope. Krian. Then take this foolish man away from here. I killed you, my son, without intending to. I don't know where to look or find support. Everything I touch goes wrong, and on my head fate climbs up with its overwhelming load. If only events could be unwound and take a different path. If I could reach back, Antigone, and change my past decisions. The attendants help Krian move up the stairs into the palace, taking Himon body with them. The chorus remains on the 21 scene, its leader repeats words ahead spoken, returning us to a previous momental. Chorus leader. Go and release the girl from her rock tomb. Anton, prepare a grave for that unburied corpse. Go now and get this done. Don't give the work to other men to do. Krian. I'll go just as I am. Come, you servants, each and every one of you. Come on. Bring axes with you. Go there quickly. Up to the higher ground. I've changed my mind. Interlude chorus. There are many uncanny and demonic things, but nothing more uncanny and demonic than man. He's taught himself speech and windswift thought, trained his feelings for communal civic life, learning to escape the icy shafts of frost, volleys of pelting rain in winter storms, the harsh life lived under the open sky. That's man, so resourceful in all he does. There's no event his skill cannot confront, other than death that alone he cannot shun. The qualities of his inventive skills bring arts beyond his dreams and lead him on, sometimes to evil and sometimes to good. If he treats his country's laws with due respect, and honors justice by swearing on the gods, he wins high honors in his city. But when he grows bold and comes to evil, then he has no city. A man like that, let him not share my home or know my mind. The most dangerous of these men or women, 22 Antigone, is the one who grows bold and turns to evil, in the way he obeys laws themselves. Instead of controlling our demonic excesses, laws become in his hands the 1031 of his demonic exes, the ledge that he uses to sap the very foundations of the city life. In an unnatural perversion, his evil takes the shape of the ruthless will to enact justice. A messenger enters low. Chorus leader. Have you come with news of some fresh trouble? In our house of kings. Messenger. They're dead. And those alive bear the responsibility. We moved to the young girl's rocky cave. The hollow cavern of that bride of death. In the furthest corner of the tomb. We saw Antigone in tears, while Haemon had his arms around her waist. Led by Creon. All three together went to the place where Polonice's corpse was left to be devoured by birds. And performed a proper burial, but people who saw this spread the rumor around the city, and the crowd, which considered Polonices a traitor attacking his own city, was shocked and enraged. Passions flared up. The crowd entered the royal palace, savagely slaughtered Creon and Haemon, and, unable to restrain and control their demonic passion, they went on a murderous spree of destruction. Now the entire city of Thebes is on fire. Antigone enters, dazed and half crazy. She walks in a trance among ruins, burning hurl. Antigone, feeling. My nature is to love. I cannot hate. Chorus. But the horror around you is nonetheless your deed. Antigone. Antigone. I am Pemlex _ how could all this destruction be the outcome of my modest demand for a proper burial? All I demanded was respect for our gods and their immemorial laws _ Chorus. Those in power can afford to obey honor and rigid principles, while ordinary people pay the PNCE for it. Perhaps divine laws are not the ultimate authority. Perhaps something much more uncanny, a command much more weird, lays dormant in the abyss of divine mystery. It is told that Jews, a strange people that lives on the eastern shore of our great sea, sing an even stranger prayer in the evening before their greatest holiday, Yom Kippur. They call it Kol Nidre. All vows we are likely to make, all oaths and pledges we are likely to take, between this Yom Kippur and the next Yom Kippur, we publicly renounce. Let them all be relinquished and abandoned, null and void, neither firm nor established. Let our vows, pledges, and oaths be considered. Neither vows nor pledges nor oaths. There's a great wisdom in these words. A wisdom that you ignored in your obstinacy. A society is kept together by the bond of word. But the domain of logos, of what can be said, always tums around a forelex of what cannot be said. And this mysterious vortex is what all our endeavors and struggles are about. Our true fidelity is to what cannot be said. And the greatest wisdom is to know when this very fidelity compels us to break our word, even if this word is the highest immemorial law. This is where you went wrong, Antigone. In sacrificing everything for your law, you lost this law itself. 23. 24 Antigone. Antigone. I just stood for justice, whatever the costs. How can this be wrong? Chorus. If your justice wins, there will be no world in which its victory is to be. We see how dedicated you are to your cause, ready to sacrifice everything for it. But wisdom tells us that, sometimes, when you forsake everything for your cause, what you lose is the cause itself, so all your sacrifices were in vain, for nothing. Then you end up not as a noble hero but as an abject, whose place is neither with the living nor with the dead, but in the uncanny in-between where monsters abide, that our mind cannot even contemplate. Antigone stands silent and motionless, with a nervous and pulsive tick on her face. Antigone. Don't you realize that you re-talking to a dead woman alive? Chorus. It's because you run yourself out in a grief with no cure, no tune limit, no measure. It is a knot no one can untie. Why are you so in love with things unbearable? Antigone. By dread things I am compelled. I know that. I see the trap closing. Now I know what I am. But while life is in me I ask only one thing. Let me go mad in my own way, in this madness of mine. I will try to imagine how events could be unwound. Even further back, to avoid this horror I'm in. On scene and we again return to a previous. Chorus leader. So she must die, that seems decided on. Antigone. Creon. Yes, for you and me the matter's closed. Chorus. But not for us. The suffering people of Niebs _ you pushed us too hard. We are just tired of standing in the shadow, and allowed to step forward just to comment your deeds, celebrating you with empty wisdoms. Creon. So you're taking that insolent girl's side? Chorus. No, it's much worse for you. We now step forward against both of you who, with your irresponsible conflict, hold all of us as a hostage and threaten the survival of the entire city. You're no longer fit to rule. So we'll take over as a collective organ and impose a new rule of law, deciding together. Here is our first decision: Cleon is no longer king. He is deposed. Both Cleon and Antigone are put under guard, and we proclaim ourselves a people's court which will impose swift justice. This matter cannot wait, our city has to start breathing normally. Creon. But that's what I was doing. I was just pragmatic for the good of the state. Chorus. And so are we, that's why we'll order you to be killed as a punishment for your brutal acts. Creon. Yes, I was tough. But as our common people say, no omelette can be made without breaking some eggs. 25. 26 Antigone. Chorus. True, we see broken eggs all around Niebs, but where is this omelette of yours? Creon. Our troubles come from the horrible deeds of Oedipus's breed. I just tried to control the damage as a master, enforcing law and order and limiting freedom when necessary. Let me repeat the words I told you some time ago. We must obey whatever man the city puts in charge, no matter what the issue, great or small, just or unjust. For there's no greater evil than a lack of leadership. Chorus. Here you are wrong. Much greater evil than a lack of leadership is an unjust leader who creates chaos in his city by the very false order he tries to impose. Such an order is the obscene travesty of the worst anarchy. The people feel this and resist the leader. A true order, on the contrary, creates the space of freedom for all citizens. A really good master doesn't just limit the freedom of his subjects. He gives freedom. In our daily lives, we are caught in our customs and cannot see beyond. When you encounter a true master, he makes you aware of things you didn't know you can do. His message is not, you cannot, or you have to, but you can. You can do the impossible, you can rebel. A true master does not stand above us, people. He is a mediator who vanishes while giving our freedom back to ourselves. Creon. I see, I'm a dead man now, no way out, but let me say. Chorus. No. Guards, don't let him speak, kill him at once. Take him into a dark corner of the palace, Antigone, and dispose of him, then throw his corpse out for scavengers to get, so that he will suffer the same fate he ordained for Polonies. Creon. Why take me inside? If your deed is honorable, what need of darkness? Chorus. You shall not die on your own terms. Guards, take Creon away. Antigone. I hope I will be allowed this last honor. Chorus. It remains to be seen. Antigone. Why? Don't you see? I'm on your side. In demanding a proper burial for Polonetsts, I was giving voice to all those who are excluded. Without their own voice, leading a shadowy existence. At the margins of our city-state. Chorus. But the excluded don't need sympathy and compassion from the privileged. They don't want others to speak for them. They themselves should speak and articulate their plight. So in speaking for them, you betrayed them even more than your uncle. You deprived them of their voice. Antigone. You perplex me with your sophistry, whatever you insinuate. I'm a good person, I can't be bought. Chorus. The lightning which strikes the house also cannot be bought. 27. 28 Antigone. Antigone. I hold to what I said. Chorus. But what did you say? Antigone. I am honest, I say my opinion. Chorus. Which opinion? Antigone. I am brave. Chorus. Against whom? Antigone. I do not consider my personal advantages. Chorus. Whose advantages do you consider then? Antigone. Of the living and of the dead. Chorus. But how does your consideration of the dead help or hurt the living? Hear us then. We know you are our enemy, an even more dangerous one than your uncle. This is why we shall now put you in front of a hole in the earth. But in consideration of your merits and good qualities, we shall decapitate you with a good sword, and bury you with a good shovel and the good earth. Antigone. No matter what you say, it's horrible to kill a human being. Chorus. But sometimes, when doing nothing opens up a gate. Antigone. To the flood of corpses, not to kill can be an even greater crime. Antigone. Is there a choice in this for me? Chorus. Of there is. You're free to choose your death. Antigone. And if I don't? Chorus. You will be put to death in any case. But if you choose to free, why meet your fate? You die with dignity. Haemon, shattered. I see your reasoning. Sharp as a blade, but I remain divided between your justice and my love for Antigone. If I were perfect, I would offer myself to swing the sword and punish her. But I'm not strong enough to do it. Unable to decide and choose, I prefer to end my life. We draws a knife and cuts his throat, members of chorus. 29. Simultaneously move towards Antigone and strike her down with sword slow. Chorus. There are many strange and wonderful things, but nothing more strangely wonderful than man. He has taught himself speech and windswift thought, trained his feelings for communal civic life, learning to escape the icy shafts of frost, volleys of pelting ram in winter storms, the harsh life lived under the open sky. That's man so resourceful in all he does. 30 Antigone. There's no event his skill cannot confront, other than death that alone he cannot shun. The qualities of his inventive skills brmg arts beyond his dreams and lead him on, sometimes to evil and sometimes to good. The most important part of true success is therefore how to deal with man's demonic excess, especially with the excess of those who rule us. Since ruling over strengthens this demonic excess, no single man is fit to rule alone. It's only right that they rule themselves collectively. In such a way, they control each other to prevent demonic outbursts, which can lead to catastrophe, even if there are no gods to help them. Such a collective of equals is bound by a Holy Spirit, a bond stronger than fate, a bond that can defy all earthly powers, and maybe even some divine. Chorus leader. Old wisdom has it right, we can't escape the clutches of our fate. But what this wisdom ignores is that we also can't escape the burden of our responsibility. We cannot use our fate as an excuse to do what pleases us. The parents of Antigone's own father knew in advance his fate and tried to avoid it. But their very measures to achieve this noble end helped the fate to realize itself. The bitter lesson of Oedipus's story was that a man who has no choice, since evil is his fate, is no less fully guilty for his disgusting deeds. But what Antigone's sad story taught is that if we miraculously redeem in time to change the course of the events that brought about the present cataclysm, the new outcome might even surpass the old one in horror and distress. We've reached the end of Antigone's sad stories. Which of them is the one to follow? Was she right in insisting to the end? Antigone. On the respect for the divine unwritten laws? Was Creon right in keeping in his sight the common good of the city-state? Or was the chorus right in getting rid of both of them and in establishing a common rule? TT1 Air is no simple answer. We, actors, are just shadows who deployed the three diverging destinies to you, our spectators. It's up to you to choose at your own risk and peril. There is no one to help you here, you are alone. When we're alone, when nothing happens, all of a sudden we're hit by the murmur of life, and at that moment wise men know how to suspend the chaos and decide. Slavoj Zizek is a Hegelian philosopher, a Lacanian psychoanalyst, and an engaged communist whose vividly adventurous, unorthodox, and wide-ranging writings have won him a unique place as one of the most high-profile thinkers of our tune. He is a researcher at the School of Law, Birkbeck College, University of London, and visiting professor at the New York University, USA. Also available from the same author. Disparity es. The concept of disparity has long been a topic of obsession and for philosophers, but Slavoj 2I2ek would argue that what disparity and negativity could mean, might mean, and should mean for us and our lives has never been more hotly debated. Disparities explores contemporary negative philosophies. From Catherine Malibu's plasticity, Julia Kristova's abjection, and Robert Pippin's self-consciousness to the god of negative theology, NEV realisms and post-humanism, and draws a radical line under them. Instead of establishing a dialogue with these other ideas of disparity, Slavoj Zizek wants to establish a definite departure, a totally different idea of disparity based on an imaginative dialectical materialism. This notion of rupturing what has gone before is based on a provocative reading of how philosophers can, if they're honest, engage with each other. Slavoj Zi2ek borrows Alain Badiou's notion that a true idea is the one that divides radically, departing from previous formulations of negativity and disp. Zizek employs a new kind of negativity, namely positing that when a philosopher deals with another philosopher, his or her stance is never one of dialogue, but one of division, of drawing a line that separates truth from falsity. Interrogating RHE real. Covering psychoanalysis, philosophy, and popular culture, and drawing on a heady mix of politics, Hegelian dialectics and Lacanian psychoanalysis, the undings collected in interrogating the real reflect not only the remarkable extent of Slavoj Zizek's varied interests, but also reveal his controversial and dynamic style.